They say your life flashes before your eyes when you're about to die. Mine didn't. Instead, I remember silence. A long, empty silence. Then a voice. Gentle, like a thread of light in an endless tunnel. And a melody. Soft, uncertain, human. That voice would become the reason I fought my way back. But before I tell you about her, I have to tell you how I got here. My name is Ethan Black. You might know me as the founder of Synapse Tech, the AI health platform that revolutionized diagnostics across 3 continents. You've probably seen my face on magazine covers, heard about my speeches at Davos, or read headlines about the 29-year-old billionaire who disappeared after a crash on Highway 84. But none of that matters now. Let me take you back to where it all began, before the money, before the awards, back when I was just a kid with dirt on my sneakers and a mind full of borrowed dreams. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Pittsburgh. My mother worked 2 jobs, one at the local diner, the other cleaning office buildings at night. My father? He left when I was 6. I remember watching Mom's hands tremble as she counted coupons, praying the electricity wouldn't get shut off again. We didn't talk about dreams in our house. We talked about survival. Still, I was always building things. Old radios, broken watches, leftover wires. I'd scavenge junk from alleyways and try to make them work. I sold my first homemade MP3, player at 13, made $20. I thought I was rich. When I was 17, I got a scholarship to a small tech college. That's where I met Javier, my first real friend, and later, my co-founder.
We stayed up every night coding, building apps that no one downloaded, burning pizzas in dorm ovens, and laughing like we'd already made it. But success wasn't linear. After college, we launched a wellness app that tanked. Then another for
Mental health assessments also failed. Investors ghosted us. We lived on canned beans. At one point, we were days away from eviction, sleeping in my rusty Toyota Corolla, Wi-Fi hunting outside fast food joints just to stay online. But rock bottom isn't what breaks you. It's what shapes you. One night, we volunteered at a local hospital, helping digitize their outdated systems in exchange for hot meals. That's when I met Arthur. He was 83, terminal cancer, didn't have much family left. But he smiled at everyone. We chatted one evening while I was fixing a printer in the oncology wing. I told him about our failing business. He said, something I never forgot. Kid, success ain't about what you make. It's about who you help while you're making it. That one sentence lit a fire in me. We pivoted fast. Javier and I began studying the gaps in health data systems, misdiagnoses, delays in treatment, insurance nightmares. The healthcare industry was ripe for disruption, but no one wanted to touch it. Too slow, too complex. That just made it more worth it to me. We built Synapse Tech from our kitchen table. The idea was simple, an AI tool that could predict potential health risks by analyzing a patient's data in real time. We pitched it to 50 investors. 49 said no. The 50th, an angel investor named Rachel Lynn, took a chance. She gave us $200,000 and 6 months to prove it worked. And we did, barely. The first hospital to pilot our software saw diagnostic accuracy rise by 38% in 3 months. From there, it spread like wildfire. Within 2 years, we were in over 800 facilities. Doctors called it their invisible assistant. Patients were getting care faster, cheaper, better. And for the first time in my life, I could afford to take my mom out to dinner without checking my bank balance first. But with growth came pressure. More investors, bigger contracts, international expansion. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of us. I started living on planes, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. I missed holidays. I forgot birthdays. My friendships faded. Javier begged me to slow down, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I kept chasing a future I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. And then came the night of the crash. I'd just left a meeting with a government health agency in D.C., our biggest deal yet. We'd been up for 22 straight hours prepping the final details. I told my assistant I'd sleep at the hotel. But I didn't. I missed my mother's voice. I missed feeling like a human being. So I got behind the wheel and started driving home, convinced I could stay awake for the 5-hour trip. I didn't make it. They told me later that I veered off the road at 3:17 a.m. The car flipped. I hit my head on the dashboard and blacked out instantly. No one found me for hours. By the time they did, I was barely breathing. When I woke up, I wasn't awake. I was stuck in a body that wouldn't move, trapped behind my own eyes, floating in nothingness. But I could hear. I could feel. And then I heard her voice. At first, I thought I was dreaming. It started with humming. Just a simple off-key melody. Then words. A lullaby. She sang quietly, like someone afraid of being caught. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. It was always around 10 p.m. when she'd start. Her voice wasn't professional. It was real, raw, human, the kind that felt like home. She didn't just sing. She talked to me. Told me about her shift, about her patients, about her mother, who had dementia, about how she couldn't afford to quit her second job, even though it was killing her, about how she sometimes wondered if she mattered at all. Anyway, you probably can't hear me, she whispered once, but singing helps me, and maybe it helps you too. I wanted to scream, it does. Please don't stop. In the world of machines and beeping monitors, her voice was the only thing that reminded me I was still alive. I didn't know her name yet. I didn't know her face. But I knew one thing. If I ever opened my eyes again, I'd find a way to repay the song that kept me breathing. You never really understand the power of a voice until it's the only thing tethering you to life. In the darkness of my coma, I lost track of time. Seconds bled into hours, hours into days. There were moments I thought I was dead, adrift in some purgatory between memory and oblivion. But then, like clockwork, she came. Every night, she'd sit beside me, sigh like the day had drained her dry, and start talking. About patience. About things she overheard in the nurse's station. About coffee machines that never worked, and co-workers who never smiled. Then she'd start singing, never the same song twice. Her voice had a kind of ache to it, like she was pouring her heart out in pieces. Today was tough, she said one evening. Room 304 passed away. I held her hand until the end. She didn't want to be alone. You don't want to be alone either, right? I wanted to weep, but I couldn't move. She never talked to me like I was a billionaire. She didn't know I was one. To her, I was just the man in room 308, the John Doe with fractured ribs, brain trauma, and no ID until the crash reports identified me through dental records. And yet, she stayed. I learned her name by accident. A nurse walked in during one of her nightly visits. Alina, you need to clock out. Again. Just 5 more minutes, she whispered. Alina. I rolled that name around in my mind like a lifeline. Alina, the girl who sang, the girl who made me feel alive again. She began telling me more about herself, not because she thought I was listening, but because no one else did. She was 28. Grew up in a small town. Her father died of a heart attack when she was 10. Her mother, once a music teacher, started showing signs of dementia 3 years ago. Since then, Alina had been working double shifts at the hospital, trying to pay off student loans and keep her mom in an assisted living center. She barely slept. Sometimes she cried while she sang. You ever feel like you're invisible? She asked me one night. Like, if you disappeared tomorrow, the world would just keep turning? No, Alina, I wanted to shout. You matter more. Then you know. But all I could do was listen. She didn't know that while she was pouring her soul out to a coma patient, The media had exploded. Tech billionaire Ethan Black, missing after crash. Where is Synapse Tech's young visionary? Foul play suspected. Was Ethan Black's car tampered with? Javier held press conferences. Our board scrambled to keep the company afloat. Stock prices dipped. Conspiracy theories ran wild. And there I was, motionless in a bed, tubes in, my arms, listening to a woman who had no idea the world was looking for me. I began to memorize her stories, her laugh, the rhythm of her footsteps. She told me about her dreams, starting a non-profit hospice center one day, where no patient would die alone. Crazy, right? She'd chuckle. Someone like me starting something like that. Not crazy, Alina, visionary. She had no idea how extraordinary she was. One night, things changed. I sensed something different in her voice. Hesitation, fear. They're moving me off this floor, she said. New nurse manager says I spend too much time here. Says it's unprofessional to sing to a patient. I screamed inside. Don't go, please. I need you. But I'll sneak back when I can. Just hold on, okay? Just keep fighting. That was the first time I felt a tear fall. Not hers, mine. I couldn't move. But something inside me shifted. A spark. Like her voice was rewiring me at the cellular level. That night she sang a song I remembered from childhood. Somewhere. Over the rainbow. Skies are blue. I hadn't heard it since I was 5, when my mother used to rock me to sleep during thunderstorms. Suddenly, I wasn't trapped anymore. I was there, on our old couch, curled up in a blanket. I could smell her perfume. I could feel her arms around me. It was like Alina had reached into my past and brought me a piece of peace. More days passed. Her visits became more hurried, sometimes only 5 minutes, but she always came. One evening, I heard the hospital director scolding her. You can't keep treating him like a friend. He's a patient, he's unconscious. Focus on the living. I waited for her to apologize. She didn't. He is living, she said quietly, and I think he hears me. That matters. I wanted to stand up and cheer. She was the only person who saw me, not as a chart or a diagnosis, but as a person still worth talking to. They say music has healing power. I believe it now. Alina's songs weren't just melodies. They were medicine. They reached parts of me no drug ever could. Then came the night everything changed. It was storming outside. Thunder rattled the windows. I heard her footsteps, fast. Panicked. She burst into the room, breathless. They're transferring you tomorrow, she whispered. To another facility, some long-term care unit. I begged them not to, but... She paused, then did something she hadn't done before. She took my hand. I don't know if you'll ever wake up, but if you do, I just want you to know. Your life matters. Even if the world gave up on you, I didn't. Then, with her forehead resting on the edge of the bed, she sang again. No background noise, no medical beeping. Just her voice. You are not alone. I am here with you. That night, I felt something crack inside me. Not pain, not panic, but light, a flicker, a pulse. The next morning, I heard voices in the room. Alina wasn't one of them. A nurse was prepping me for transfer. Machines were unplugging. Gurney wheels squeaked. I tried to move my hand. Nothing. I tried again. A twitch. Then another. And then... My fingers curled. The nurse screamed. Code called. Chaos. Doctors rushed in. Machines beeped. But I didn't care about any of it, because I knew in that moment I was coming back, and the first thing I wanted, no, needed, was to see the girl who sang me home. Waking up from a coma isn't like in the movies. There's no dramatic gasp, no instant recognition of your surroundings. It's slow, confusing, like rising from underwater through thick molasses. But when I opened my eyes, I remembered two things. My name is Ethan Black. A woman named Alina sang me back to life. Everything else came in fragments. Faces I didn't know. Doctors cheering. Blinding lights. A voice calling, "He's awake! My God, he's actually awake!" But Alina wasn't there. The room was full, yet I felt utterly alone. My body was weak. I couldn't move my legs. My voice came out in a whisper. Physical therapy started the next day. They said I was lucky to be alive, but every day felt like a battlefield. My limbs didn't listen. My mind raced, but my mouth stuttered. Still, I pushed. Every lift of a spoon, every blink, every syllable, I did it for her. I didn't know where she'd gone, or even if she'd been told I was conscious again. But I needed her to know. I heard her. Every word. Every song. One day I finally asked a nurse, "Where is the woman who used to sing to me?" Blinked in surprise. "You mean Alina?" My heart stuttered. Yes. She was moved off ICU 2 weeks ago. I think she quit. Quit? I felt like I'd been punched. She didn't know I was awake. Didn't know her voice had saved me. Once I had enough strength, I called Javier. He answered in tears. "Ethan. Man, you're alive. They said you might never. I'm back," I said. "But I need your help. Not with synapse tech. Not yet." "What do you need?" "I need to find someone." Within hours, my security team, assistants, and private investigators were mobilized. I had resources now, money, influence, reach. But no one could tell me where she'd gone. Just that she'd handed in her resignation after an argument with a supervisor and quietly disappeared. A woman who gave everything, left with nothing. But I remembered the details she told me during those quiet nights. Her mom with dementia, the assisted living home, the old piano in their apartment she couldn't afford to repair. I followed every breadcrumb, until finally, 3 weeks later, I found her. She was working part-time at a senior care center 2 towns away. I arrived in a black SUV, still recovering, walking with a cane, sunglasses hiding the swelling around my eyes. I stepped inside quietly. There she was, sitting beside an old man in a wheelchair, playing a soft tune on a dusty upright piano. Her voice hadn't changed, still warm, still aching. I waited until the song ended. She turned and froze, her mouth opened slightly. "You're—" "Yes," I said. "I'm the man from room 308, the one you sang to every night." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You remember every note." We sat outside on a wooden bench under a maple tree. She didn't know what to say. Neither did I, until I looked at her and said, "You're the reason I'm alive, Alina. You kept me tethered to this world when I was ready to let go." "I didn't think anyone was listening," she whispered. "I was. I still am." She shook her head. "You're Ethan Black, the tech billionaire, the man everyone thought was dead, and You're not just anything," I interrupted. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." Her lip trembled. "I got fired because of you." "I know," I said, "and I'm going to make it right." Over the next month, I spent every spare moment with her, learning about her world, her mother, her dreams. I introduced her to my mother, who cried when she hugged her. I took Alina to the Synapse Tech headquarters, showed her the product she unknowingly inspired, and then I made her a promise. "You once said you wanted to start a hospice where no one dies alone. I want to help you build it." Her eyes widened. "What?" "I mean it. You gave me back my life. Let me invest in yours." She shook her head. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," I said. "It's partnership. You have the heart. I have the capital. Let's change the world together." That's how the Eversong Foundation was born. We opened our first facility a year later, a place filled with music, compassion, and dignity. Every room has a speaker that plays the patient's favorite songs. Every nurse is trained not just in care, but in listening. Alina is now the executive director. Me? I finally slowed down. I still chair Synapse Tech, but I no longer live in boardrooms. I live in moments. I live in music. And sometimes, when no one's watching, I stand outside the hospice chapel and listen as Alina sings. It's strange how your entire life can pivot on a whisper. A moment. A song sung in the dark by someone who thinks no one is listening. For me, that moment didn't just change my life. It gave me a new one. 1 year after I woke from the coma, we held the grand opening for the Eversong Foundation's flagship hospice center. Journalists filled the lobby. Cameras flashed. But I kept my speech short. This place isn't about me, I told them. It's about a nurse who believed in the humanity of the forgotten, who sang to a man she thought couldn't hear her, because it was the right thing to do, because compassion doesn't require recognition. And then I looked toward Alina. She wore a soft blue dress, her hair in a loose braid, her mother seated beside her, smiling faintly, even through her dementia. I knew that smile, that pride. She didn't know I was a billionaire, I said. But she treated me like I mattered anyway. The crowd fell silent. That was the moment I truly realized. Money builds companies, but compassion builds legacies. Over. The months that followed, the Eversong model spread. We opened centers in 5 states, then 7, then 12. Every facility had the same mission. No one should leave this world alone, forgotten, or unloved. People began to notice. Philanthropists, doctors, musicians, patients, nurses. Our waiting list grew longer than we could handle. But one evening, after a long board meeting, I found Alina in the piano room, playing softly to a woman in her final hours. After the song, I said, "You could delegate more." "You're the executive director, Alina. You don't have to sit by every bedside." She smiled gently. "But I want to. This is the part that matters most." That's when I realized she wasn't just leading a movement. She was living it. That winter, I asked her to marry me. I didn't plan anything extravagant. No jets, no diamonds the size of ice cubes. Just us, under the stars, beside the garden she helped plant at the first hospice home. She looked surprised. "You're serious?" I've never been more certain of anything in my life. She didn't answer with words, she just kissed me, and that was enough. Our wedding was small, no press, no CEOs, just friends, family, and patients we'd come to love. Her mother walked her down the aisle, her mind miraculously clear that day. She even hummed along to the music. As Alina stood beside me, she said something I'll never forget. "You may be a billionaire, Ethan Black, but in my eyes, you'll always be the man who listened to my song in the dark." I didn't have a response for that, because there was nothing left to say. A few years later, after the birth of our daughter, Amelia, we started a new program called Sing Back. It pairs volunteers with terminally ill patients to sing, read, or simply talk to them during their final days. Within 2 years, it had over 40,000 volunteers worldwide. People often ask me if I miss the tech world, the thrill of IPOs launching, products dominating markets. I tell them this: no invention I ever built has changed lives the way a lullaby can, not even close. There's one final moment I want to share. Something I haven't spoken of publicly before. It happened about 4 years after my recovery. I returned to the hospital where I had once laid comatose. The nurse who had scolded Alina for spending too much time with me was still there, older, a little softer. I visited the ICU. Same hallway. Same smell. Room 308 was empty now. I stepped inside and sat on the bed where I once lay, and for the first time I sang just one verse. "You are not alone. I am here with you." The melody echoed softly. A young nurse passing by paused in the doorway, surprised. I looked at her and smiled. "Just repaying a debt. I've built software that connects continents, but the most powerful connection I've ever known came not from code, but from a voice in the dark, a struggling nurse, a silent man, a moment of pure, undeserved kindness. That's all it took. To build an empire worth more than any fortune, an empire of empathy, and I will spend the rest of my life investing in it. Because sometimes, the most valuable thing in the world is someone who believes you're still in there, even when no one else does.